Hi everyone, welcome to Dr. Vicky Writes. I'm Vicky. Nobody actually calls me Dr. Vicky, but I do have a PhD. And in this video, I will be talking about what your Viva will likely entail. You might never have even heard that word before. This video covers the 12th and the last objective of the course. And you can find the course syllabus in the video description below. So, as usual, before we dive in, I want you to think about what you might already know about what a Viva entails and about what you feel like you still need to learn, or any worries or concerns that you have around this topic. I recommend taking a minute to jot down the first few things that come to mind. A Viva is basically an in-depth questioning of your undergrad, master's, or PhD project. A questioning of what you did and why. You'll probably have some type of Viva after handing in even your undergrad dissertation. And you definitely will after handing in your PhD thesis. At undergrad or master's level, they might not call it a Viva, but it will likely be a similar experience. After I handed in my undergrad dissertation, everybody on my course had to take part in, separately that is, not altogether, a 1 hour meeting to discuss your project with your supervisor. Well, let me just go back and rephrase that. So everyone had to do this in my course, but after I handed in my undergrad dissertation, I had to take part in a 1 hour meeting to discuss my project with my supervisor and another lecturer from the department, who I guess was kind of playing the role of like independent examiner. So in other words, that was like a mini Viva, but nobody ever called it that. So I actually had no idea how to prepare for that meeting at all. And I didn't prepare for it at all. I thought I had prepared, but nope. And then at the end of my summer master's project, we, instead of like that meeting type of vibe, we had to all give a 20-minute presentation about our project in front of the rest of like the master's students class. And there was maybe like max 10 of us in that class, so not a huge group. And their like each person's supervisor came, and I'm sure like other people from like other lecturers from the department. And then like the people in the audience, like the other people in the department would asked some questions at the end of each person's presentation. Even though it was masters and it was at Glasgow Uni, like instead of Strathclyde, which is where I did my undergrad, I would say it was definitely less intense than the hour of questioning that I had at the end of my undergrad. Maybe that is just because I was so unprepared, it felt more intense. Because my master's project went well and I felt prepared and like I knew what I was doing and knew what I was talking about. So maybe that's why it felt less intense. And then when I finished my PhD, I obviously had to do a typical Viva, which is like a 2 to 3 hour meeting with 2 examiners, one of whom I knew from my department and one who was completely independent, like I'd never met him before, or I don't think he worked at the same uni that I was doing my PhD at. And that meeting consisted of them asking me just loads of questions about my thesis. And 2 to 3 hours seems like really long, but it goes really fast, just like a long exam. So if you are required to do a traditional style of Viva, what you'll need to do is be able to explain in depth what you did for your project and why. You might need to give a summary of the topic to start things off, kind of like what's written in your literature review, including how you've like contributed to the field with your new results, and maybe like discuss the implications of your findings. Similar to what I recommended when writing up your literature review, I now recommend enrolling someone to read through your dissertation or thesis, making notes about what you did and why, and then ask you questions about it over the course of like an hour or so, if it was like for a dissertation, or it would have to be longer if you're doing a PhD. So I say so a lot, don't I? Sort of sentences. Because it like might be difficult for just a friend from outside of your course or like a family member who has no knowledge of the subject to ask you the type of in-depth questions that you might get at your Viva, it would probably be a good idea here to ask someone else on your course, or who is at least doing like a similar subject to you, maybe not exactly the exact same course. You could offer to do the same for them in return. And again, when you do meet, record that meeting on your phone so that you can go over it afterwards to prepare further, clarifying things that you weren't sure about when asked about them by your friend or whoever, and like filling in any gaps in your explanation. Don't worry about the fact that no matter how much you prepare, you won't know exactly what questions you're going to be asked. It's perfectly fine to answer with, oh, I never thought about that, or I wasn't able to look into that because of XYZ reason. So maybe just prepare some kind of standard answers that you're going to give when you have like no clue about what answer the examiner is looking for. You won't fail just because you don't have a robust, detailed answer to every question. Actually, I'm a rambler. So if you can kind of come up with, or if you're a rambler like that as well, just try and when you're answering questions, be concise. Like, don't go on and on and on, thinking that the more you speak, like the better that answer will be, because they're probably looking for short answers to a lot of things. So as long as you're able to answer most questions, you'll be fine. And being as familiar as possible with what you've done and why you did those things in your project is the key to that. So think about the time between handing in your dissertation or thesis and the time that your Viva is scheduled for as time in which you need to study what you've done and why. Hopefully with the help of a partner in the same boat. And you could apply the same rule of like 4 hours a day, 3 days a week, if you want to like, make sure that you've prepared to the utmost. After a PhD Viva, you usually get a list of corrections that the examiners have agreed that they need you to make before being able to conclude that you've fully passed. And like those corrections either usually come in the category of like minor or major, but that doesn't happen at undergrad or master's level, to my knowledge anyway. And that covers the basics of what your Viva will likely entail. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comment section below. Or if you'd prefer, you can email me at drvicky911@gmail.com. I also encourage you to think about the following questions and do the same. Comment or email. Did I clarify anything for you? Did I address any worries or concerns that you had around this topic? Do you feel like you've learned anything new that will be of value to you? And how does what I've covered relate to your own personal situation? I'll check and respond to comments every second weekday. And while I might not have time to read or respond directly to emails, if you send me an email, I won't just leave it lying in my inbox forevermore. I will get round to reading it eventually. Thanks for watching. See you next time.